Welcome back to the Midlife by Design podcast. I'm your host, Lori Lisai, and I am a human design teacher and alignment coach, here to help midlife women use human design to shed others' expectations and be who you came here to be. In today's episode, we tackle people-pleasing and how to overcome these tendencies using the power of your human design profile. Whether you know that this is you as a people pleaser, or if you're not even sure if you do this, tune in for some practical tips on how to tap into your HD wisdom to start defining what's next for you in midlife. Hello, and welcome back to Midlife by Design. Today, I am so excited to talk about something that I find comes up very often with women in midlife, and that is figuring out what's next. And before we dive into that, I just want to say that it's not too late and you're not too old to restart, to find a whole different version of yourself, to let out the authentic you that maybe has been suppressed. And we're going to talk about that today through the lens of human design. So I want to talk about people pleasing. If you've fallen into this trap, which if you're a woman, chances are you have in one way, shape, or form, I'm going to help you discern whether that's a pattern of yours. And then we're going to talk about your human design profile and how that can actually help you to work your way out of that in order to gain clarity on your next steps, in order to help you answer the question, what is next? And if you've been listening for a bit, you probably know that I am hosting a retreat called Wild Women by Design. It's a wraparound retreat experience, and it's a space designed for midlife women who are ready to break free from the expectations of society, who are ready to rediscover their authenticity and their authentic self and actually take bold steps into that next chapter. So stay tuned for more details about that during this episode. And by the end of this episode, you can plan to gain insights into how your profile lines will help you to reveal that unique path forward. So let's get started with this idea of people pleasing. There's all this cultural conditioning that we experience as women, and it's because we have been conditioned to put other people first. We've been conditioned to put our children first. That's being a good mom is by and large sacrificing for your children. And being a good partner can often mean sacrificing for your partner. And being a, quote, good employee can mean sacrificing at work. And the problem comes in when you're sacrificing so much of yourself that you lose yourself and you find yourself feeling really unfulfilled by the time you reach midlife because you've been sort of taking a back seat in so many different areas in your life. So let's see if you are actually people pleasing. Like, is this you? I want you to just take a minute to reflect right now, because you might even not realize what you've been doing, that you have been spending years putting other people first, because it just feels like what you do. And you might even pride yourself on being a selfless human being. So this is a great opportunity for you to grab your journal, but if you're driving or walking, then you can return to these questions, or you can just maybe hit the pause button and spend a little time thinking about them as I go through them. So my first question for you to determine whether or not you're in this people-pleasing space is, do you often say yes to requests even when you feel drained when doing them, or you just don't want to? Do you say yes to things when you really don't want to do this? This can come out of a fear of disappointing others or feeling like you're going to be judged in a negative way. If you're constantly just prioritizing other people's needs over your own, this can definitely be a sign of people pleasing. Another question is, do you avoid conflict or discomfort, even if it means silencing your own feelings or your own needs? And I'm going to be 100% honest. I fall into this camp, and it's something that I've been working on for years now. And I have to remind myself over and over again that, yeah, we don't have to be liked by everyone. We are not here to sacrifice ourselves and who we came here to be in order to make other people more comfortable. And avoiding difficult conversations or holding back your true opinions just to keep the peace or just to make other people feel more comfortable is when you might be compromising your own authenticity just to maintain that harmony. And you can see where if you are doing this really often, then each time you get that opportunity, you're giving away a little piece of who you are in trade for feeling this false sense of ease, because it really is false when you aren't sharing your truth. I will say, just as an aside here, that if you have an open or undefined emotional solar plexus in your human design, then this is probably going to be something that you're pretty conditioned to do, because you really don't want to disappoint other people, because you feel that disappointment at a much higher level than the person who you're disappointing, for example. So again, the question is, do you avoid conflict or discomfort, even if it means silencing your own feelings or needs? Okay, next question. Do you feel guilty when you take time for yourself or when you set boundaries? So again, another classic emotion is this feeling of guilt, right? And people pleasers often feel guilty when they decide to take time for themselves or if they set a boundary with somebody. So maybe think about, when was the last time that you said no without feeling guilty? Good question, right? Was there the last time that you said no without feeling guilty? Hopefully, yes. But if it takes some clearing out of cobwebs to come to that answer, then this is definitely a sign of people pleasing. Next question is, do you find that your self-worth is tied to how much you either help each other or how liked you feel by others? Are you gauging your self-worth by external validation? Like how much other people appreciate you, how you're serving others, how people are reacting to you? Are you sort of addicted to that feeling and somehow attaching your worthiness to other people's opinions about you? And pro tip here for parents, this is a great reminder to recognize your kids for who they are, not what they accomplish. It's really important to recognize your children for who they are as human beings, not just what they do. And this is a piece of building that people-pleasing tendency, because when our kids hear from us, oh, I'm getting love when I accomplish XYZ, then that is just further cementing this idea that they have to be doing something in order to receive our love. And the last question I have for you is, do you feel like you've lost touch with what you actually want in life? Maybe you even have a hard time discerning what you want. Maybe if somebody asks you, what do you want? You maybe go into fight or flight. Like, I don't even know where to start. Sometimes people pleasing goes so deep that you lose sight of your own dreams and desires because you have been saying yes to other people, or because you've been putting other people first before yourself. So this idea of, what do I want next? If you have no clue, then that is such a strong signal to you that it's time to break free from people pleasing. So some signs that you may be people pleasing. I wanted to just give you a few of these. The first one is feeling overwhelmed or resentful, but you continue to keep pushing because it's for other people. You're pushing through that overwhelm and that resentment for other people because you just feel like you have to. You don't want to let them down. Maybe you often feel drained or exhausted after socializing or interacting with other people or helping other people. So if doing things for other people just leaves you feeling drained as opposed to feeling lit up and fulfilled, great harbinger of people pleasing right there. Another one is having trouble setting or enforcing boundaries, even when you know you need them. So you might be in the camp where you know your cup is running way over. You have way too much going on, and you're still struggling to say no, or maybe you have said no, but you're allowing yourself to be convinced otherwise. So how do you set boundaries and stick to them? If you're struggling with this, that's definitely a sign of people pleasing. And then the last one that I have for you is around pursuing your own passions or goals. And if you find yourself not spending time doing that because you're too busy fulfilling other obligations for other people, another sign of people pleasing. If you don't have time for yourself, definitely people pleasing. So once you've recognized that you may be a people pleaser, that maybe you've been engaging in people pleasing, understanding your human design profile can be a really powerful tool to start shifting away from these patterns. And each profile line offers insights into your natural way of being and how you can honor yourself more. Let's talk about where you can find your profile in your human design chart. So if you go to my website, lorilisai.com, and download your human design chart, it will just tell you, it will list it out for you, your energy type and your profile, and some other great stuff to know about your human design. So your human design profile is two numbers combined. It would be something like a 5-1 or a 2-4 or a 6-3. There are actually 12 different profiles similar to 12 different zodiac signs, and they are archetypes, basically. They're the archetypal role that we come here to play in this lifetime. The first number in your profile corresponds to the conscious side of you, and the second number in your profile corresponds to your unconscious side. And together, they make up your entire profile. And each line has a certain kind of flavor to it. It has a certain kind of feel. And I want to dive into those and how you can actually break free from people pleasing using your human design profile to decondition. So let's start with line 1. So some of the line 1 profiles are like a 1-3 or a 1-4, for example. And the line 1 is called the investigator. And what I want you to do if you have a line 1 in your profile is really start by trusting your own research and your own interests. So what can happen with line 1 women is that they can get lost in trying to meet others' expectations or proving their knowledge in order to be accepted. So they feel like they have to prove that they know enough, basically. And there's usually this consistent doubt that they do know enough. And there's this constant kind of deep dive need for knowledge when they have a 1 line. So in order to start practicing deconditioning and getting away from that and really coming to your more authentic self, You want to stop seeking external validation and just trust that need to dive deeply into subjects that interest you. And don't worry about knowing enough. Just trust that as a line one, you probably know more than the average bear. So I want to really encourage you to spend time researching the topics or ideas that are truly and purely for your own fulfillment. They're just things that you are excited about, that you want to learn about. And it's not something that necessarily is for somebody else or because somebody else expects it of you. It could be a new hobby. Maybe it's a course that you want to take. Maybe you want to learn how to do something new. These are all ways that you can just start a deep dive. So I'm going to give you an action step for each of the lines. And if you have one of these lines, so for example, if you have a line one in either your conscious or your unconscious side, I want you to just practice with these action steps and see if they start to shift things for you a little bit. So for a line one, think about how you can carve out a little bit of time. Maybe it's 20 minutes per week to study or explore something that excites you. Even if nobody else understands it, even if nobody else, maybe especially if nobody else benefits from it, it's truly, truly for you. And I want to just mention the Wild Women by Design retreat, because for line ones who attend a retreat, this is where connections are built on shared deep dives. When you can go in deep with another person, that's when you find your people. It's one of the ways that line ones find that they can truly build these deep connections. And at Wild Women by Design, we will be creating personalized workbooks for you. So something for line ones to just dive into and learn all kinds of things about themselves. We will be teaching workshops, again, opportunities for you to learn and to dive deeply into your design. Okay, let's talk about line two. So line two is called the Hermit. And what I'd like for you to do if you are a line two is honor your need for alone time in order to connect with your natural gifts. Because as a line two, they are called the Hermit, but also the natural. What can happen with line two women is that they often feel pressured to engage with others, even if they are actually just wanting to be alone. They don't want to be antisocial, so they ignore their downtime needs, or they don't want to let somebody else down. So they kind of ignore this need to just sort of hermit and go be social anyway, because they don't want to be judged or they don't want to disappoint people. So I want to just, if you have a line two in your profile, maybe you're a 2-4 or a 2-5, I want to encourage you to embrace your alone time as essential for recharging. And what it does is it helps you reconnect with your natural gifts, which is a beautiful thing. You can see that in order to do that, it really is so important for you to give yourself this time alone, just to hole up. And it allows those gifts to kind of emerge authentically, as opposed to you trying to force something. It's something that just comes out naturally. So, action steps for my line twos: set aside intentional alone time each day. No distractions, no external demands, just some time for you to do something that feels nourishing and that truly aligns with you, your true self. So it could be time alone, deep diving into a hobby that you have. It could be meditation. It could be resting. It could be reading. Like whatever makes you feel refreshed and nourished when you are by yourself. So Line twos in a retreat experience in wild women. I mean, a retreat, the word itself, retreat, is designed for line twos, right? It's that time to literally take yourself out of your everyday and retreat into this nurturing, supportive environment where there is spaciousness, there is alone time, because ultimately, when you are at a retreat, you get to call the shots about how you spend your time, and nobody there is going to judge you. You have only your own expectations to live up to. Let's talk about line three. Line three is called the martyr or the experimenter. And for line threes, I ask you to embrace your mistakes as lessons for your own growth. They are mistakes in quotation marks because really it's all about making mistakes and figuring out what doesn't work in order to figure out what does work. So, line three women can often feel a lot of pressure to make things perfect. And that can lead them to people pleasing by constantly trying to fix or correct situations in order to get approval from other people. So that's really an issue with line three, people pleasing. And what I invite you to do is shift your mindset from fearing mistakes to actually embracing them. If you allow yourself to learn through trial and error, then you'll actually discover exactly what lights you up rather than people pleasing for other people and then ending up doing something that doesn't at all align with who you are because you didn't allow yourself to like get in the sandbox and play around with things. So what I would love for you to do as a line three is identify one area of your life where maybe you've been afraid to fail or even try something new because of other people's expectations. And how can you take a small risk this week? Whether it's a conversation or maybe it's trying a different way of doing something, or maybe it's a new project. How can you take a small risk to focus on what excites you and what you really want to learn about rather than worrying about the outcome? How can you do that? So I invite you to do that. And line threes at retreat are going to thrive because they connect through shared experiences. So making connections with women while on retreat happens when they get to dive in and into the sandbox and get dirty and get curious together, and they gain clarity about those next steps from learning together with other people and from just getting messy in the sandbox and trying things and seeing what works and really knowing how to honor themselves while they are there. Line four is called the opportunist or the networker. And line fours have an invitation to really build their network with authentic connections. The key for line fours is that they've got to build the network that works for them with people that truly see them for who they are. So line fours could be 2 4s, could be 4 1s, for example. And their people pleasing can be driven by this really strong desire for harmony in their relationships. Line fours could people please by keeping relationships that no longer serve them. They can also people please by neglecting boundaries so that they can maintain their network. So maybe they have people in their network who don't truly feel aligned anymore, but they don't want to let other people down. And so they don't create those boundaries to shift the focus away from those people who aren't really aligned. So what I would invite you to do if you are aligned for is focus on building those connections that are both authentic as well as reciprocal. So what are the connections that you can create that are helpful for both of you rather than just pleasing other people. So, an action step for line fours would be to reflect on your current relationships and figuring out if they are mutually beneficial, if they nurture you, if you feel good and fulfilled after spending time with these people. And if not, think about how you can set a boundary or seek out a new connection where you feel like you truly can be your authentic self. And line fours at retreats, this is the perfect opportunity to come together and build meaningful relationships, especially when you come to a retreat like Wild Women by Design, where you've got a group of women who are working on the same thing that you are, and they're in a very similar space that you're in. So you already have that connection and you can just build from there. Line five is called the heretic, and these people are profiles like 5-1s, 2-5s, for example. And my hope for you is to lead with your own vision as opposed to what other people are expecting of you. So, line fives are natural leaders and problem solvers, very much looking to solve any issues that are coming up. But what can happen is they can fall into people pleasing when they try to like save others or fix problems that really aren't theirs to solve. And this can really be an energy suck and pull them away from their own goals. And I'm speaking from experience here because I am a 5-1. So for line fives, what I would love for you to do is focus on leading in ways that align with your personal values and vision. Think about what is really important to you. Do a values exercise where you can get clear on what is important to you. And then focus on leading with those things in mind, as opposed to trying to solve every problem that comes your way. It's okay to just simply listen if that's what you're trying to do for your friends, for example, and not solve problems. Because by setting boundaries, what you're actually doing is creating space so that you can solve problems that are truly aligned. So, what I invite you to do as a line five for an action step here is to evaluate where are you solving problems that actually are not yours to solve, and how can you delegate, or how can you maybe step away from a situation where you feel this pressure to come in and save or come in and solve the problem, and just redirect that energy toward something that does light you up, that you really truly feel excited about. And line fives sometimes can struggle with building connections because they are the natural leaders. They are these problem solvers. And what I have found is that oftentimes connections come through solving problems together, through working on problems together. So that's a beautiful thing to experience while on a retreat, because you're gaining tools to inspire others and to make bold, authentic choices and to work together with the other women at the retreat on these problems. And in this case, we're talking about figuring out what's next. Line 6 is the last of the profile lines, and this line is called the role model. And what I invite you to do as a line 6 is to truly step into your wisdom and your authentic path. So the interesting thing about line 6 is it's the transition profile, where you have lines 1 through 5 that are sort of on this earthly plane. And then line 6 is sort of starting to shift away and look outward into a much broader way of thinking and being. And so they really are this role model. They also are the only profile that has 3 distinct phases through their entire lives, where the first phase, they're living more like a line 3. The second phase is called on the roof, where they're taking the lessons from the getting messy and experimenting. and integrating them. And then in the third phase, they're being called forward to really share that. So line 6 women can often feel the weight of this being a role model and instead shift to being more conforming around other people's expectations and sort of what society expects of them versus being more of the role model and stepping into that really forward way of thinking. So they might suppress their uniqueness in order to fit in because they don't feel wise or they don't quite know how to express it. So, what I would encourage you to do if you're a line 6 is to embrace your authenticity, embrace what makes you weird, particularly as you move into this midlife phase where this is your time to step forward as a wise guide. This is your time to come off the roof and to start sharing what you have learned. So, if you can be living your truth, then you're going to naturally inspire other people without needing to people please or conform to other people's expectations. So, action step for line 6s is to reflect on where you've been living according to what society or family expects of you. And what would you do differently if you fully trusted your inner wisdom? Not what everybody else expects, but what if you just tuned into your own intuition? And what I would suggest for you is just take one small but bold step that aligns with your authentic vision for your life, who you want to be. And then trust that other people are going to benefit from that just by leading by example. And for line 6s, connections can be a little challenging because they really want to connect very deeply. And their connections are usually built on spirituality or this desire to go deep. And so a place like Wild Women by Design, a retreat space that has people that are already thinking that way, is such a wonderful space to find people who are aligned with you. So women in midlife are looking for a place to answer what's next and how do I do that? And it's a scary question. A lot of us are tired of the work that we've been doing or the lives that we have been leading, and we know something needs to change, but we're not exactly sure how to do it. And when you enter into a retreat space, that deeply immersive space allows you to crack open the way that you just can't do when you have all of the other things going on in your life that you need to juggle, and you're being the hard drive for your family. You're holding all the information on top of all the other things that you're juggling. Retreats help you to literally come back to yourself. I have this current client that I'm working with. She's a 6'2". Just as an example of how does your profile work with figuring out what's next. One way of doing this is by looking at how can I step into these pieces of my human design and start expressing them in alignment with who I came here to be. So this 6'2" that I'm talking about, we'll call her Jennifer. Her 6 line, as an example, the way that she's diving into that is through this wisdom that she has built by owning 4 different businesses. Over her lifetime, she has owned a number of different businesses. And that 3 line early in her life dove in, got very messy, had lots of lessons that felt very much like mistakes. And she received all kinds of advice about how to run a business and what one should do. And eventually she started to trust herself and her own intuition about how to run a business, about how she wanted the workday to look, about how she wanted interactions to look, about how she wanted meetings with her employees to look. And the more she was able to lean into that, the more she was leaning into that 6-line energy of being the role model, of trusting your own inherent gifts. And that inherent gifts piece lives in her line 2. And as a line 2, guiding people came naturally to her. She intuitively trusted that she could guide people towards success because she started to see evidence of it through what she was doing in her work with her employees. So knowing that she is a 6-2 is this giant permission slip for her to say, okay, this is the way I need to be doing this. And I can stop listening to anybody else who's going to tell me how to do this business thing. I have the experience. I have tried and quote failed. I have tried and learned all of these things through my own experiences. And I also just know intuitively how I want my business to look and where I want to take it. And I'm going to start trusting that. So, as a 6-2, this is an example of how she was able to really transform how she looked at leading in her business and her role as a business owner. And this is just an example of the kind of realization that can come about during a time like a retreat. And with our wraparound experience, we have support for you before and after the retreat online via community calls. And it's a space for us to both create a community and meet the women that we're going to be spending a week in Costa Rica with, start forging those new connections, start meeting people who align with our visions and our hopes for the future, and also give you a space to share experiences, share what's going on in real life so that we can brainstorm. How do you actually integrate? How do you use these things that you're learning about your human design to live your life and to live it in a more authentic way? So this is an example of how being in a space can help you unlock some of these gifts and be supported and do it as a quantum leap because you're in this intensive experience. This retreat, Wild Women by Design, it's not only going to provide you with the actual tools like the workbooks and information about human design, but you're also going to get time and space to focus entirely on yourself. How rare is an opportunity like that for midlife women? Happens like never, right? And for women who have spent years focused on everyone else, for women who have mired themselves in people pleasing so much so that maybe they've lost who they are or what they want, or they have no idea even where to start thinking about what's next, a retreat is such a powerful experience and place for transformation. So I encourage you to reflect on your profile lines and ask yourself where you can stop the people pleasing. How can you use your profile line to bring you more in alignment with the role that you're here to play? And think about what is possible if you stop people pleasing. How important is it to be constantly pleasing everybody else and not being true to yourself? And for those who are ready to step into the next chapter, Wild Women by Design is an incredible wraparound retreat experience that is full of luxury. I mean, the accommodations themselves at Imaloa are mind-blowing, but you will feel so held and so supported. You will also meet incredible connections. I met two of the most amazing women with whom I am hosting this retreat, and I would never have even thought it possible at the beginning of this year. even. So we met in April, and now we're hosting our own retreat less than a year later together. And that is the power of connections during this week of deep transformation. And it's also a place where you're going to have an opportunity to embody the wild woman energy. And if you aren't quite sure what I mean by that, go back and listen to the previous episode, which I will link in the show notes, all about the wild woman archetype, where we really dive into what does that mean exactly. But this space is an opportunity for you to embody that energy, to really practice being in it, feeling it, being it, so that you know how it feels in your body. And then creating a plan. As a 5-1, I am a problem solver. I am looking for ways to help you have something tangible and practical to leave this retreat with. And so you will leave this retreat with a plan for what's next. So I invite you to check out my website, lorilisai.com, to learn more about the retreat, or to book a human design reading if you'd like to dive into your own personal design. I want to help you discover what's next when you choose yourself, and really help you understand that Wild Women by Design is such a great space to do that in. Thank you so much for listening to Midlife by Design. If this episode resonated with you, I would so appreciate it if you would share it with another midlife woman who would benefit, or rate it on Apple Podcasts so that we can help more women find alignment in midlife. And as we wrap up, I'm sending you strength to let go of people pleasing, joy to fill your days, and the clarity to be who you came here to be.